All right, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're going to let people enter the room here and we'll get started. Very excited to be holding this webinar today. It's on building the bridge between marketing and operations for franchise growth. So excited to get started, and we'll go ahead and kick that off. So very excited to have two greats of franchising. We'll go ahead and anoint you as legends of franchising here. So we have Richard Sparacchio, the co-founder of Made Pro, and with Threshold Brands, they've been able to expand into multiple brands, and Autumn Liu with Just Between Friends, the vice president of marketing. So would love to just have each of you introduce yourselves. I'm the director of demand gen at Netsertive, and would love to just kick off with Autumn. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and Just Between Friends.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having us on here, Jason. I'm excited to talk about this conversation today. Just Between Friends is, we're blessed to be a leader in our space, which is a family serving space. Just Between Friends, for those who are not familiar, is a pop-up children's and maternity consignment sales event. I know that's an absolute mouthful, but what we are, as it breaks down, is, having kids, you need so much stuff. So these are community marketplaces where families can bring the items their kids have outgrown and sell those items and make some money back on them. And other families can come and buy the items their growing kids need. They grow so fast. There's so much they need. They can buy those items at 50 to 90% off retail prices. And after the sale is over, local charities are consigners who sell their items. The sellers can choose to donate items to those local charity partners, so even more families in the communities are helped. So this is about local events, it's about families serving families and connecting, and it's about keeping items out of landfill and sustainability.
That's great. Yeah, I know we'll get to this later, but I know you all are have a big goal in mind to donate $100 million worth of goods to charities. It's very exciting. Great.
Thank
great
you
cause.
for saying so. Amen.
Everyone. So Rich, go ahead and tell us about your history in franchising.
Absolutely. I actually grew up in family businesses and went to college here in Boston. And just about 31 years ago, Mark Kashinsky and I started our first brand, which was Made Pro. And we were very lucky to get in the right space. And over the last 31 years, we got tied into some of Mark's passions, which were technology, some of our passions around marketing. And we pretty much, over the last 31 years, we built a national brand that had 300 locations. We're very focused on the culture of our franchise brand, very focused on satisfaction, validations, FBR winner of many years in a row. Last year we got #1. But the big change in my life is that last year we sold our brand to private equity, and Mark and I are both working in our next acts. And I'm a college professor teaching family business and also teach franchising. And I'm really glad to be here, and I'm really happy to help share my experience in franchising over the last 30 years.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Well, I know we're going to get into some great content today, all about building the bridge between marketing and operations for franchise growth. So we'll dig into building a people first mentality and culture. And I know for both of you, culture is so huge in success. That relationship between marketing and operations, how to keep the bridge strong through culture and innovation, and finally, how franchisee satisfaction affects marketing and operation. So just quick update or plug for Netsertive. If you're new to what we do, we really have deep expertise in local digital franchise marketing. So we have a platform that integrates all of the major local advertising channels into a single platform, and that allows us to run effective multi-channel, multi-location advertising campaigns. And so what that looks like is multiple locations from a franchise network being served by our technology and team. And our platform is actually able to optimize the campaigns based on what's performing better in one location, share those learnings, and really deliver a high return on ad spend. So we've been around for many years. We have a podcast, the Multi-Location Marketing Leader, and we're also launching a new podcast called The Art of Franchise Marketing. But I'll say enough about us because we've got some great insights to jump into here with Rich and Autumn. So would love to just first dive into this building a people first mentality and culture. I know, Rich, we were talking before we went live just about that importance of culture and bringing the right people on board. Can you just share a little bit about the role that you see in the people that you bring into your franchise network and how that builds culture?
Absolutely. First of all, as I was thinking about this webinar, I was thinking from my perspective, there's really two dimensions of that culture. There's the dimension of that culture as it relates to the home office team, and that team involves marketing, operations, technology, legal. There's a lot of different variables or different departments that can be a part of that home office culture. And then you have that second dimension, which is the franchisee culture, which is basically how the franchisees sort of compete with one another and motivate one another and how they teach one another. And we were always focused on both of those cultures, even though they're very different audiences. So back to your question, I really have to say, we put a lot, in our experience, we put a lot of effort into making sure we're awarding the franchise to the right fit. And we were of the belief when we were owners that there was basically no one exact profile. We'd meet people where they are, but we were really looking for people who were really had the same core beliefs as we did. So we were very comfortable sharing very early on with our brand, this is who we are, this is our core beliefs. We would talk about that in the validation process. So we were really, we had many generations of the iteration of our business. So there's been different, decades of growth. But generally speaking, we were really trying to find people who were nice. And, there's nothing like finding nice, smart people who have common goals and trying to really sift through the people who may be a distraction to the brand in some way. So on the franchise side, we put a lot of effort on the awarding process. We had a system. And then on the internal culture with the home office team, I mean, that is something that is for any company, something you have to be extremely judicious of who you bring on. I think we got better and better over the years at selecting the right type of people to join our company. But it was the compass was our core beliefs. I think our core beliefs allowed us to kind of say, this is who we are. Are we a good fit? Are we going to work together? So we were able to focus on that heavily in the decades of building MadePro, Jason. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. And Autumn, what about you as far as who are you finding to join your networks, and how does culture play a role?
Absolutely. I agree everything that Richard has said. I think it's so important when you're looking at this because it's all about relationships, right? When you get down to it. And so you want to make sure that you have the right partners, both at the home office and at the franchisee level, because they become a part of that culture shaping. And I know, Richard, I'm sure you've been in this longer than I have. I think you said 30 years, 16 years for me. But we've seen what happens when we put someone into the mix, either maybe, of course, not intentionally, but something happens and you end up introducing an element to your system that doesn't bring out a favorable aspect of culture, because culture can go for the better, or it can take things to a place where you didn't intend for it to go. So we do also have a vetting process in our franchise development, and we're looking for people that are, irrepressibly optimistic, open-handed sharing, because there's so much about franchising that is built as you go. Because if people are close-handed, you can have a great franchisee, but if they're not willing to share what they have, it just creates such a rift within the system. So I think that's so incredibly important in the home office and at the franchisee level.
Do either of you have an example of how you've remedied a relationship on a team, maybe when there wasn't a good fit, or it was there needed to be some some work done to mend a relationship?
I want to hear Richard talk, and I'm taking notes.
So, we were meticulous, and again, I'd say were, because the brand that Mark and I started, it's now owned by a private equity firm, and it's a part of Threshold Brands, which is among many field service brands. So they're now a part of a family of brands, and they're building off of what we built. So they're making their mark accordingly, and they're going to do a great job with it. But when I speak about my experiences, I'm speaking about during my tenure and my tenure with Mark. So my answer to that question is, we were meticulous about making sure that the relationships were strong, and we would be I'd say we would be almost obsessive about trying to get to the root problems of things, and we did that with many ways. We did that with just straight communication. We did it where sometimes you have to meet people where they are and they're not willing to share what's really going on, but we would ask the tough questions. We would survey our franchises regularly with our own internal surveys, so they felt like they had a place to really share how they felt. And personally, we would read every word that the franchises, so we would survey our franchises before places like FBR surveyed the franchises. Nothing like, why wait till the global one goes out? Why not do it internally? So we would do things like that. But to answer your question, we'd have these moments with franchises, say, what's happening? Where can we help you? How can we help you exit the system if that's the direction you want to go? We ran it like a family, and sometimes when you run a business like a family, you've got to be sensitive that you're going to get some energies that might be distractive to the culture. But there was no secret sauce to doing it, other than trying to have the best intention with setting your franchises up success. You sometimes have to, our experience, you sometimes have to forget about what happened in that email they sent and kind of say, okay, they were having a bad day. Let's realize they are good people with good hearts. So it was a major human connection, let's say, attempt for us to try to resolve those things. And in most cases, we really were able to get to the bottom of things and move on. So I don't know if there's a system to what I just said, but it was done religiously throughout our brand. And we all worked hard at it, every one of us. We would take phone calls from franchisees 9 o'clock at night on a Friday. They would have our cell phone numbers. We were obsessive about making sure our family culture was kept at a standard where it was healthy and positive. So, and I just want to share that that's hard to do if you don't pick the right franchisees from the beginning, because you got to start with some common ground. But that's been my experience, Jason. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Autumn, anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that Richard is saying, and it does help if you make those right decisions from the get-go. We encourage that open, honest communication, and we add from the home office that we're going to come at it with respect and humility. And like you're saying, everybody has a bad day. Sometimes I know we've all done it. We've shot off that email right away that we just wish we had sat on overnight, because in the morning we wake up with that feeling, so giving people the benefit of the doubt, absolutely, and we ask the tough questions like you're saying, Richard, and then we learn, adjust, and we grow, and we examine and say, what happened here? Were the expectations off? Maybe we had too many expectations of that position, and how do we need to adjust it here to make this work for everyone, to make it work better on both sides, again, home office and franchisee level.
That's great. I think vendors are another aspect, another member of the family, right? When they're coming in, you need to have that culture match the culture you're building. Do either of you have any stories or tips on seamlessly transitioning a new vendor into the franchise marketing and operations processes so that the franchisees buy in and everyone's happy?
You want to take that, Autumn?
Sure, absolutely. You know, we have a vetting process with vendors, of course, and we do ask questions and see how our potential vendors respond. We want to know, are they going to come at this relationship with an open, honest willingness to learn about who we are? You know, one of the challenges about just between friends is that we are an unusual business model. We are open, you know, we have our franchisees host 2 sales per year. So that means we've got to get it right out of the gate. We don't have a lot of opportunity for research and development during the year. So we want to make sure that our vendors are able to understand that and are in touch with who we are as a brand, so they can not just say the right things, but appreciate who we're serving and understand too that we're about families. You know, when it comes down to it, there are a million families that are counting on us getting this right. And so our vendor partners are a part of that process. So I like to remind them of the families that are here to benefit and that need this service that our business provides. I'm sure much like Made Pro too, Richard. And so, you know, we can't have a vendor failure on any level.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely see that the more you keep the ultimate why and the purpose in mind, that's something you can align everyone around. That's great. Well, let's go to the next topic here. So I think I think we see from both of you how important those initial decisions are, right? The gates on the front of your brand and your network are so important so that you have the right people at the table. And so, you know, once you have great people in place, the marketing teams and operations teams are working together so closely to grow and expand and deliver and ultimately serve customers at the local level and you know, increase franchisee satisfaction while building brands. And would love to just hear from, you know, maybe we start with Richard on that connection between marketing and operations, how it works in franchising, and you know, what is critical about that relationship.
So before I answer that, I want to touch upon the vendor question. With our brand, we had probably vendor light. We probably had, you know, less than 15 vendors. I mean, some brands might have 40 vendors that they're involved with. So there's vendors were critical. Absolutely. They were from payroll services to Procter and Gamble for supply vendors, and it goes on and on. But it was a smaller group. And I wanted to share this because it might be valuable to the listeners, is that we would really invest in travel and gatherings and things that would bring our franchisees and our vendors together. So my business partner, Mark, was absolutely, he was incredibly creative about having these gatherings, or, you know, took many forms, but they were, you know, conventions, which are not necessarily new to franchising, but we were able to do them in some really cool places. We also had adventure trips, and we would do things as a groups that would really help us get to know each other. And how I tie this into vendors is because we would really involve our vendors in these places, and we would really try to, you know, let them be a part of our culture. So in our case, there's nothing like traveling with people to get to know them. It's nothing like going to a cool place and and do some fun stuff together to really get to know each other. So we were just doing it because it was fun and because it seemed to really build those connections. So I wanted to add that with vendors, even though we were not vendor heavy. We did have those vehicles to bring those connections together. So back to your question. The marketing, I know, and I was sharing before the call started, but I actually, I had my heart in coaching. So I was very much involved in the operations and coaching side of the business. And I certainly had my heart in marketing because I really believe what marketing can do. But and we were two departments that we would actually bring the departments together on a regular basis. I would welcome the marketing department into the coaching meeting so that we can actually have marketing's perspective. So we really had this transparency across departments, and we didn't look at each other like we're competing against each other. We just respected the fact that we had very different functions as departments. For example, market and some of the stuff that we do and we did with marketing at MadePro was simply revolutionary. And even how we would actually have our own internal digital marketing support for them, just like what your company does. We did some incredibly creative things around marketing, but that's different than teaching, franchisees how to run a business and to execute the model. So we were both, each department we really had different wheelhouses, and there was times where some of the wheelhouses were harder than the other one. And I think we were good at, respecting that. I was coaching centric. I was very, very protective of my coaching team, but I think the teams in marketing knew where my heart was. It's just sometimes we could get way ahead of ourselves in marketing before we had the execution in place. So I don't know, that was my experience, Jason, if that helps.
No, that's great. Autumn, what about you? I know I definitely wanted to touch on coaching, and since it was brought up, I know you have coaches and you're looking to expand that. How does coaching play a role at Just Between Friends?
Absolutely. The coaches are some of our culture keepers, right? They're modeling, they're the mentors, the ones that our people go to for answers, for help. They're a first line for help for our franchisees, especially, our events happen for the most part on weekends. And so, Richard, you're talking about getting those calls on Friday nights. And so when something is not going the way that it should be, those coaches are there to help handle that and help our people. Sometimes when you're in the middle of what feels like a crisis, I'm sure we've all had that experience where our mind goes blank and we no longer know the things we knew, and we just need to reach out and get a lifeline, call a lifeline. And so our coaches serve that purpose. And I come from the marketing side, but we work so closely with operations, and we look at what are the keys that we need in place to keep the two walking side by side, hand in hand. Because without that, you can have the greatest marketing in the world, but if there's not the execution, if there's not the support, that's not going to matter, because nobody's going to have the experience they're expecting. And so they're not coming back. So it really is a continuous cycle. And with Just Between Friends, we work together and we innovate together. We share ideas together, or we find out maybe there's something that's not working well in operations. So how can we brainstorm together to help provide the support that team needs? Or from the marketing side, perhaps there's something in our franchise development process that we need to bring out and to emphasize in our selection process. What are we seeing? What are some of the common things that maybe are the threads that we're hearing that our people are not understanding in the way that we're promoting a franchise? So it feels to me it's a continuous circle, it's a cycle, and it provides for constant development and feedback.
That's great. I know that those lessons learned eventually will make their way into the standard operating procedures and the processes. I know, Rich, you've been big on operations and processes. Can you speak to that? Just the importance or what you learned in all those years about documented processes and how you go about improving those?
Well, first of all, my business partner was really gifted in being able to see how important those processes are so you can scale. And that was just his one of his many natural talents. With with my perspective of the coaching or operations component, there needs to be best practices. But one thing about Made Pro is that we built a model where we gave our franchises incredible amount of flexibility in the model. We were not positioned as a militaristic franchisor. We were positioned as, here's a set of tools in the toolbox. We'll teach you how to use the tools, and all these tools are available to you. And there's certain tools you definitely want to use because they're going to keep you in business. But we were really we let the franchisees come to their own decision on what tools they wanted to prioritize. So it was like a toolbox that we sold in operations and coaching. So that was how we approached it at the time. And you know, that has its advantages, because it does give the franchisee a lot more autonomy and a lot more creativity, and a lot of creativity from our franchises. We're able to come back to the home office so we can build it into the best practices. So it was really pleasing to see it look like that and how it developed. But I do realize that most franchises have those best practices, and they are a little bit more rigid. Typically, we just didn't go that rigid route. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but with coaching and executing, we would meet people where they are. We were extremely, we really looked at ourselves as in adult education or operations department. And these, you know, Autumn mentioned it, but these, you know, however you want to call these coaches, and I know I'm a little bit coaching, you know, centric, so I will try to be less, let's say, biased, but they are ambassadors to the brand, and they're really helping the franchisees through whatever they're going through. And you know, we were really careful about you know, getting them to that next level, giving them their privacy when they were able to share things with us, and really, you know, gave them a lot of love. And I know that's not a corporate word people use often, but that's how we built our coaching model and expanded it. But the department itself was something that really had to rely on making sure that we can make the experience as good as the marketing looks, because our marketing is special, and it was beautiful and creatively, aesthetically pleasing. So it's nice to see that, but if you can't execute that on the ground level, it's kind of like, you know, everyone knows, and doesn't have to be franchising. If your marketing doesn't line up with the experience, well, how long is that going to last you? You know, so we were aware of that. We were sensitive to that, but we really worked hard at inspiring the franchisees to get it to the next level, and that's sort of the spirit of our coaching department. So hope that helps.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know, Autumn, I know you all work a lot with your franchisees, because they're doing a lot of their own social media, right? And promotion.
Yes.
And I know that sometimes there's you have to get over this, how are you going to promote yourself and get out there and sort of raise a ruckus? How do marketing and operations work together to coach your franchisees so that they can show up in the right social networks?
Right. You know, that's a great question. Sorry, Rich.
Was that for you? I want to make sure that's for Autumn. I just want to make sure.
That's for Autumn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, and feel free to jump in. You know, I think that we provide best practices. We too, I don't think of us as a militant brand. We're family friendly through and through. And when we're looking for people, again, one of the things that we're looking for is a heart to serve the community. That's so important, and we feel we can build the rest in through training, like you're saying, Richard, adult education, and you know, we're all learning in that. And I think an important part for us is making sure that we have tools that our people can use, marketing tools, that we supply templates that they can use without having a graphic design background and without needing to have or employ a huge staff or a huge team. So that's a part of our system, is making sure that our tools are intuitive, that our people can jump in and use and create things on the go. I hate to even say the word COVID. Is it okay if I use a dirty word here in our webinar and say COVID? When COVID came upon us last year, having a marketing system that allowed us to make, I mean, some of our sales closed like people had just set up their sales, and their health department would show up and say, you're closing in 3 hours. Talk about a nightmare. And so having a marketing system and support where people could jump in, or this was actually a beautiful side, that they would contact another franchisee and say, help, I'm at my sale. I need to get the word out in our social media that we're having to close, and we have to, this is a huge, after all of the marketing saying we're opening, to get the word out that we have to close for the safety of everyone. And so our franchisees helping one another in that way, and using social media as a way to post that information was critical during that time. And, there are two sides to having flexibility, right? There's you got to be ready for what's going to show up in those feeds. And, but again, I don't want to keep banging that culture drum, but it is so important, because when you're coming from the right place in culture, what's going to show up on the other side is going to be 9 times out of 10, even probably, 29 times out of 30, go a little further, it's going to be in alignment. And it might look a little bit different. You have to be ready for maybe a different choice in photo than you might expect, but it's going to be in alignment and support the brand. And looking strong as a brand, like Richard was saying, across both marketing and operations is so key. That's the brand promise, right? You're going to get what we say you're going to get. And if any part misses and shows up in social media, for example, that's where we hear about it. And we want to hear about it too. We want to be ready to hear if something did not deliver, and then do what we can to make it right. When our customers reach out to us and they did not have the experience they expected, they are taking the time to let us know. And we try to catch it before it shows up, let's say in a Google My Business review. So we catch it as early as we can, and we thank them for that feedback and ask for the opportunity to do what we can to make it right.
Wow, that's great. I want to move on to the next section, and I'm guessing coaching and culture is going to be part of this, but I want to know from both of you, how do you keep that bridge strong between marketing and operations, especially around change and innovation? Are there any formal programs or committees or ways that in your past experience that you've seen work really well when it comes to optimizing change and innovation? Rich, you seem to be smiling about something. Do you have? Just thinking about change and innovation. You got something?
No, if I will interject, I was smiling because, we really, and I don't know how new this is to those in the industry, it's pretty common, but we would really rely on our franchise advisory boards, which were these groups that had passions around operations or marketing or technology. And we always used I actually used to run the one community, which was like sort of, the culture piece. And I really enjoyed that because we would open it up to the whole brand, and we'd have people, really bringing those heart stories to the conversation. So those franchise advisory boards, their franchise councils, whatever they're called in the FDD of the franchise, whatever the parameters are, they're a wonderful vehicle to bridge that change and innovation, because they allow you to really have the pulse of what you might have a franchisee who's, had a career in marketing in their past life that's pretty sophisticated, and geez Louise, you'd want them in that conversation because they have some good ideas. So my smile was that franchise advisory boards, or some form of them, are a wonderful way to filter that and to feel like the franchisees have a seat at the table to have the conversation. So that'd be my easy one there for you, Jason.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Autumn? How do you all handle change and innovation at Just Between Friends?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Richard. We have a franchise advisory council, and they're so critical. Sometimes at the home office, we have what we think is a brilliant idea. And at the franchisee level, they just are shaking their heads going, yeah, but, and so it's those yeah, buts. And if we had brought that voice in sooner to the process, we would have had a better solution earlier on. So we're looking at our structure at the home office, and, to your point, Richard, looking at what positions do we need to create, or what processes can we put in place to have seats at the tables to make sure we're hearing the right voices, because listening to the right voices are going to lead us in the right direction for our brand. And that's where our change and innovation comes from.
I want to, I totally glad that Autumn's, is using those same type of advisory councils, because I think we'd be remiss in not mentioning how important they can be to the success of the franchise reputation validations. But, one thing that came to my mind that I want to share is that, and again, every franchise is different, but we would really bring our marketing people in and our operations people in to help us award the franchise. So guess what? Our marketing and coaching team would get to know that potential franchise way before they're a franchisee. So they would actually help shape the match. So I don't know how other brands do it, but that seemed to work very well. So you're actually, and we would actually scorecard sort of how we would think that franchisee would be a good fit to the brand. So bringing in those departments early in the validation process, which might be common everywhere, I just don't know, but that was really felt like the right thing to do in our years. So I wanted to add that.
No, that absolutely makes sense. When you think about the overall role of innovation, I know sometimes there's marketing is changing constantly. There's so much that's changing so quickly. How do you kind of balance that? Maybe the answer is probably using those advisory boards, right? What are people ready to handle, ready to take on, incorporate as new? How do you handle incorporating or piloting new technologies or tools for franchisees?
Do you want me to take that, Autumn?
Yeah, sure.
And, I'll just say that we, not only the franchise advisory boards, but we would have mechanisms in place that were actually, there was a couple different pieces of technology we use, but there is a way to capture ideas on a regular basis and have franchisees vote for those ideas. And
I love that.
Yeah, we had, it's still in existence, and we had a couple iterations of it, but the ability for franchisees to vote and allow and to basically prioritize what projects should go for. It doesn't mean that that's where the franchisor is going to, make the final call, but to be able to take the pulse of the franchise, it's almost like active polling is really what it is. So that was a mechanism that was super helpful. And, in our brand, it was kind of up to the department head to come to the table and say, listen, this is where, we're falling behind on this. We need to invest in this. And my business partner, who was a CEO at the time, he would make that he was paid to break the tie and make that decision. And in some cases, it was just an obvious one where he wouldn't even need to comment on it. But that's how we did it with our Made Pro brand. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's interesting. Autumn, anything to?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I do want to mention the responsibility of the franchisor here. We do have a responsibility to where possible, vet technology, to stay on top of marketing changes, marketing trends. Some come and go and you go, whew, I'm glad we didn't jump into that one.
Right.
But we have the responsibility to investigate and to see what technologies are going to be necessary for our brand, so that we're not so late to the game to introducing them that we miss the good that they could bring our brand. So, we definitely want to run things by our franchisees to see if they feel the need, but also make sure that we're doing our homework on the other side to stay on top. And boy, I don't know if marketing's ever gone through so much change as it has. And with the events happening only twice per year, we can't just put out a playbook and call it good and let that run for a couple of years. It's like every 6 months. We're going into the lab. How did it work? Did it do what we thought it would? Where do we have room for improvement so we can bring out a better game plan for the next sales season?
Yeah, so much can change even just in 6 months in marketing.
It's crazy,
right? What's engaging people online. Well, let's jump into this final topic here around franchisee satisfaction. And if anyone does have questions, I know we collected some questions at registration that I'll get to, but if anyone does have questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A box, and would love to just hear from both of you about franchisee satisfaction. And I know, and oftentimes that is a key metric that is going to drive a lot of decisions and ultimately growth. So what role do you have in your franchise system for franchisee satisfaction? How are you measuring it? How are you using that to gauge success and improve that? So sort of an open topic about franchisee satisfaction. Autumn, do you want to start with that one?
Sure, absolutely. And I think between Richard and I, this is key for both of our brands. And we do internal polls, we do internal surveys. We've brought in Franchise Business Review. Love their large survey that we do, once a year. So critical, and to the point where this is going to help provide our roadmap moving forward for the next year of focus, because it's that voice. We're hearing what didn't work, we love to hear what's working, and it's great to hear those things, but especially paying attention to that feedback and listening closely to what's being asked for here, what's being said. Our franchisees are very gracious in sharing, but when they've shared, we want to perk up and listen and take notes on those areas, and say they're giving us clues as to how we can make our system more successful. So we will focus on those areas and look to not only do better with satisfaction next time, but then that means we're going to be doing a better job delivering on our promises to them from the home office.
That's great. What about you, Richard?
I totally agree with Autumn on the importance of those internal measurements that are ongoing throughout the year. But to add an additional perspective on that question, I would say, a lot of the excitement has to come from the leadership team, that the leadership team is communicating. When I say leadership team, I mean, there's so many different shapes to that, but depending on the company, but the leadership team, meaning, the head of marketing, the head of technology, the, head of coaching, what's the chief operating officer's excitement about the brand. So we would really build from the great minds that were on our executive team. Some of the people that had sort of an enthusiasm about where we were going, we were doing our best to filter that through coaching and filtering that through marketing. So I know that's obvious, but we were always trying to say, well, okay, when we'd have a convention, we'd say, well, what are you bringing to them that we can get them really excited about where the industry is going? Now, we were lucky because we were in an industry that is just getting more and more popular. Doesn't sound like, the most interesting industry at face value, but, we're really selling time to people, and the world's getting more and more manic, and we're selling time back to these homeowners and these families. So we were able to position it that way in our business, and it continues to get more and more popular. More and more people are needing our services. So we got lucky. There's some services that no matter how smart you are, it's going in this way, and you could have the most smart people. Sometimes it's just luck being in the right industry. So my comment is that enthusiasm has to come from the executive team, in my opinion. And I think we did it. I think we were really, always bringing something funny or quirky. We were always bringing something that was going to bring value to the profitability of their business. It could be fun, but it has to go back to, are we helping them become more profitable? Are we helping them become more scalable? Are we getting them out of the day-to-day? That was another thing we did with a lot of passion, is we got them out of the day-to-day stuff that was drudgery, and we actually built services so that we can allow those services to be outsourced. So it allowed the franchisees to be more free from their being handcuffed to their businesses. So anyway, that's some of the stuff that we did, and I could go on, but hopefully that helps, Jason.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about those influencer multi-unit owners, the biggest locations that everyone looks to? Would you have unique relationships with some of those key influencers, and what role do they play, either just culturally or officially in your franchise networks?
You go first, Autumn.
Sure, absolutely. Well, taking care of those franchisees. They have special needs, and recognizing that, and making sure you have support systems in place for those multi-unit owners, right? Because the things that they're facing are going to be their challenges may look different than those of a single unit owner, and making sure that they're taken care of, because, you know, satisfaction or dissatisfaction, it's contagious. And, you know, when people are looking for their roadmap to growth, they're absolutely going to look to the leaders in your system to see, what are they doing? How are they doing it? How did they get where they are now? And so, you know, we have special conversations, and make time for conversations between leadership and those franchisees to hear what their needs are, because we may not necessarily know what they are. We don't ever want to assume that we know what they need. We want to hear those expressed so that we can meet and hopefully exceed those expectations, especially in the realm of satisfaction, because that does ripple all the way through your system.
That's great. Love that. Well, I want to actually jump to some of the questions that we received. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and enter them as well, and we can take them on the fly. But do you have just any general tips for succeeding in working at a home office of a franchise? Kind of a broad question, but you know, what does it take to be successful?
Richard?
Cross any department, or asked if it's for a specific department? Just
sure, it's for the lens of marketing or operations.
Okay, and those two, operations or marketing. Well, you know, I think it's really, I mean, this is my perspective. I think it's really important to be able to make sure the franchisees feel a connection to that department, meaning even if coaching has more of a day-to-day involvement, and it depends on the model, has more and more of an involvement, you still want to make sure, if you're working in that department, that your message is getting out to the ground floor, to the franchisee's perspective, and that you're able to help communicate that. I think anything you can do to help, and of course you've got to get buy-in from the proper authorities within your brand, but you have to make sure that the franchisee gets a sense of that you're really thinking about things, and you know, you don't, you know, someone taught me this a long time ago, in franchising, you want to be chasing your franchisees down the road, try to catch up to them. You want to be running and let them try to catch up to you. You want to be that, just like Autumn said, you want to make sure that you're staying innovative and you're thinking about the new things that are out there. But, you know, the franchisees really need to know that the people in those key positions are really thinkers. I mean, we had some really sophisticated franchises who would really challenge us on, how are you thinking about this? How are you thinking about that? So to answer that question, I would, if I were working in a home office in any operations or marketing position, I would do my best to make sure there's not a disconnect to what you're doing in that department to the franchisee masses. I think you can work in silos between marketing and operations very easily, which is a bad idea, and that's why we're having this webinar. But you also can work in silos as a franchisor, separate from your franchisee. It seems so basic, but when you're dealing with 300 different personalities, 300 different stages in their business's life cycle, you really have to bring that all together. And it's quite the feat. It really, it's fun because everything's different every day, every week, but you really have to be impeccable with your communication skills. So anyway, that would be off the cuff what I would answer for that person, Jason.
Oh, I love that. We had quite a few different flavors of this question. I think we've covered it some, but just about the best ways of engaging franchisees to help with their local marketing efforts. How, you know, anything additional to add about just getting franchisees bought in to help?
Absolutely. You know, and tell me if I'm misunderstanding the question that you've received, but, you know, I think successful marketing is the marketing that starts with the customer in mind. I know this is very 101, but sometimes we become so engaged with what it is that we want to share that we forget that everyone is filtering it through the what's in it for me filter. And so our messaging may not be hitting our customer the right way because we're so concerned with getting across what it is that we have to say. So sometimes it's stepping back enough from the marketing enough to go, does this meet a need of the customer? Are we speaking to them in the language that they're hearing? Are we on the right channel? Is this a social media message? Is this an email message? Where do they need to hear from us, and when do they need to hear from us to make sure that we're connecting with them?
That's great. Yeah, definitely. I've heard so much from both of you just around aligning everyone around the customer needs. And this is a question, actually, I just wanted to, Autumn, ask you about how that element of purpose, how the charitable efforts come in to the success of your sales, and just tell us about that effort that you all have going to donate $100 million of goods. I think having that layer of charitable, giving on top of meeting the needs of local parents is just really interesting. So we'd love to just, tell us about that and what role that plays in your success.
Absolutely. We have, it's a program called Vision 2030. The goal that you mentioned earlier, thank you so much for asking about it, is that we are able to donate $100 million worth of goods to local family serving charities. And I have to say, honestly, our franchisees, we get to be the ones to help watch and make it happen. It's our consigners who are the ones that are choosing. They're making that choice. When they are tagging their items, they get to choose if they're going to pick up anything that didn't sell or donate. And the beauty of that donation is that these are items that have been safety inspected. These, if they're at the sale, there's no holes, rips, tears, or stains. So these charities are getting top quality items that have been safety inspected. So it's not like, they're discards per se. They're really great items. And so having a way to keep items and keep resources within the local community has been such a key effort. And, local is now king. At one time, I know in our organization, we were thinking, should we really align with a national charity, which are fantastic too. But we really love the idea of being able to work directly with those local charities. Some are attached to larger organizations, but for the most part, they're a single operation that are working to help serve those families that are in need, even within our own community. And so the sale provides a very natural way to allow families to do that, give them a way to be generous. And so we love getting to be a part of that and getting to see families helped and served because, when it comes down to it, we believe that everybody deserves to feel good about how they're taking care of their families. Socioeconomic, whatever conditions, that mom needs to know, look, you are doing it. You are doing a good job. That dad, you're making it happen, right? Especially COVID times. Richard, you mentioned being in the right place at the right time. We have what we consider a divine appointing, that we're here to help these families right now that really, really need it. And so this Vision 2030 gives us a place to do that. It allows our consigners to be generous and to be a part of the good.
Love that. What a great mission to align around and get everyone excited. So I just wanted to see, as we're coming up on time, any final closing comments or remarks from either of you as far as aligning marketing and sales, marketing and operations, and just, I don't know what it takes, any final stories, anything? I know there's something that you've been thinking about sharing that you haven't. What do you want to leave people with today? Rich, we'll go with you first.
Well, I did take some notes on things I wanted to interject, and I'll say, making sure that each department within the home office is clearly, it's really clear who owns the subject matter, who owns that topic, who owns the marketing, like really understand, making sure that is clarity of who has their hands on the wheel of that area, because there's no way that one person can know all the pieces of that home office. So making sure that person is representing very well to the rest of the franchise community. I think that worked very well for us. I also say, you asked earlier about when you have multiple franchises, multiple unit franchises, we did what we call peer performance groups, where we have leaders within revenue groups, leaders within regions. And that's a way to actually get those leading larger franchises as mentors to help some of the newer people in the brand, but we would call them peer performance groups. And I also want to leave you with, a lot of the cross-department harmony was built because we traveled together in departments. So if there are people who work in a home office, I mean, really, we built those relationships by going places together, by breaking bread together and having meals together. And it's even possible in this time we're in. But I felt that really was a special part of made those connections. So simple stuff, but that's what I've learned in my years of franchising.
That's great. I love that. Autumn, any final closing thoughts?
I just want to say again, adventure trips. I'm taking that one with me, Richie. We're going to work that in, especially now, right? We're ready for some adventure trips. I think that's fantastic.
Well, reach out to my business partner, Mark Kaczynski, because he was the one that built all those adventure trips. But if I can, I'm just honored to be here. And if I can help anyone who's listening, or if I can help you, Autumn, or you, Jason, I'm really honored to be here. So thank you for letting me do this.
That's great. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to both of you and to everyone who's able to join us today live or on the replay. Really appreciate it. And if anyone would like to learn more about Netsertive, you can check us out at netsertive.com. And with that, I'll say thank you so much. And we look forward to continuing these conversations. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye, Autumn. Bye, Jason.
Bye, Richard. Bye, Jason. Thanks so much. What a blast.